We recently completed a trip all the way through Canada to Alaska, and boy, there is a lot we wish we had known before we got started.
Yeah, like how much can you expect to spend on diesel driving through the country?
Do you need an extra auxiliary fuel tank to actually survive the drive?
What about the border crossing? What documentation is needed?
How much was the total cost of the entire trip?
Ugh.
Listen, the questions are never ending, and we have all the information right here waiting for you.
Just a brief overview, we did this trip in about 13 days, starting in Sumas, Washington. And just to add a little spice of life to the trip, we took the Cassiar Highway, also known as Highway 37.
What's the big deal with the Cassiar Highway? Well, it is like one of the most desolate highways, I would say, on your trip to Alaska. Fuel resources and RV repair shops are so few and far between.
And we did 0 upgrades to the rig before taking on this journey. We're gonna let you know if that was a mistake.
One of the biggest personal concerns I had was crossing the border. There was a lot of unknowns of what we need to actually bring to the border, questions we were gonna be asked, things we need to prepare for, and just how do you handle the entire situation from A to Z.
It's probably because people scared us and they're like, you're gonna get searched. And I was like, okay.
How do we prevent that from happening? Well, let us tell you, a great place to start is having the proper documentation. Now, there's a lot of new updates and restrictions always happening, so we always want to refer you to the right website. One of the most important things to have in hand is obviously your passports, but if you're traveling with pets, you're going to want to pay attention.
There's always concern about our fur babies. This is another one that people were constantly asking about, is what documentation is needed for our little babies, little children.
We were scrambling trying to figure this out. We're like, well, we got to bring the little guy with us.
Yes. Online, it tells you have to have proof of vaccination if they're 3 months and under as a pet. But then we read again that it's for all pets. Our advice is make sure you have a rabies vaccine. People also had questions on whether you needed a health certificate for your pet. And what we found out is you only need that if your pet appears ill.
Now, to touch on it real quick, we have never been asked crossing the border for proof of these rabies vaccinations, but it's nice to have your bases covered.
Yeah, in fact, when we went to the Alaskan border, we handed the vaccine paperwork over and he's like, I don't need that. Hi.
All I need is the passport.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So,
well, excuse us. We're just trying to be all proper and prepared. But we'll touch on more how to handle those situations in just a second, because there are some, what do you call them, nuances when dealing with the Border Patrol guards. But let's talk about the COVID restrictions, because that seems to be a big unknown factor going forward. As of right now in 2023, there are no need for any COVID tests or complete vaccination records while crossing the border if you are a US resident. Now, that is up in the air and that can change at any time, so we always say refer to the website for complete documentation. Now, regarding exactly what they're gonna ask you at the border crossing, well, that varies.
most of the time they are gonna ask where are you coming from and how long are you staying.
We personally found it made our lives a lot easier just being open with them. We're not trying to hide anything, so the more clear and just concise about what you're doing up there, the more pressure it's gonna take off your back. Trust us.
There is one thing that they always never fail to mention, and it is...
Okay, how about defensive equipment? What do you have for that?
Firearms on board?
No.
Picking up what you're throwing down, weapons. They are always going to ask you, are you bringing any weapons into the country?
Now, if you plan on bringing a firearm into Canada, we're gonna tell you to refer to the website so you can study what is a non-restricted firearm and the reason behind bringing it.
But piggybacking off of that, what about tobacco, alcohol, and drugs?
Some of those things you could bring, and you're probably wondering which ones they are.
You're really good at this. I'm gonna let you explain this one.
So you can bring tobacco. There's like a certain amount of cigarettes and cigars you're allowed to bring. And same thing with alcohol. You're allowed like a bottle of wine or so much beer or so much ounces of liquor.
Here's an interesting tip for you, however. With marijuana, the actual use in Washington, Canada, and Alaska, it's legal. However, since it's federally not legal, you're not allowed to bring it across the border. So just know that. They're gonna ask you, do you have any marijuana on board?
And if you have these items, you must declare it.
Because if any chance they pull you to the side and then they find it, you could be in a big pickle, and I just hope we never find you in that situation. Or find ourselves in that situation.
And for your own personal enjoyment and information, we have some Thanks Hanks tips on great ways to do the border crossing.
Or great ways to not do the border crossing, because boy did we learn some lessons going across.
Yes.
Here's a big one. When you actually proceed to the border checkpoint crossing, you're getting ready to talk to the guard, make sure all your windows are rolled down. Be open so they can see clearly throughout your vehicle. Take your sunglasses off.
Who should do all the talking? Probably just one person.
I was trying to answer over you, and it just wasn't good. It was a weird dynamic, and the guard was like, dude, you need to chill. I'm talking to the wife here. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Speaking of making light of the situation, don't crack jokes when you're at the border. It may seem like you're nervous, and the nervous energy may like lead into these jokes that you think will lighten the mood. Don't do it. Just keep it professional, answer their questions accordingly.
Yeah. Way to go. You made it past the border. You're in Canada. Now you got to figure out how many miles a day is appropriate to drive.
Well, what's the longest drive day that we had?
Ooh, you want to talk hours or miles?
Why not both?
Because on miles on paper, it wasn't that much.
No, it wasn't. Everything on paper is not that much, especially when you enter it into the maps.
Oh, yeah.
Piece of cake? I think not. It's not a piece of cake. The longest drive we had was that one day when we went through Destruction Bay. 12 hours in total we were on the road.
And we went about 315 miles.
Do we recommend doing this? Probably not. Plan for 250 miles max in your trips.
You can do what we did, but you're gonna be on the road all day and you're gonna be miserable.
It's because the roads up there, they're not super well maintained. The weather, it takes a toll on the roads, and unfortunately you have to account for that with slower speeds.
And Google Maps is gonna tell you you'll get there in 6 hours. Pfft. We need to have a conversation about campgrounds in Canada, because there's a lot we learned, and I wish we learned this before we left.
And there is some differences between the US campgrounds and Canadian campgrounds. And we're gonna spill all the beans right now.
The provincial parks are very, very similar to state parks, except most of them are first come, first serve. You know how US state parks you can pretty much book and reserve online?
Not such a much.
Now, were we able to pull off first come, first serve with 2 RVs? We did.
We nailed it.
And not to brag too much, but we got electric sites too.
Okay, that is pretty braggy. So how much did we spend at these campgrounds? Did we pull out extra Canadian cash to have on hand? Were there foreign transaction fees anytime we used our credit card? Well, we're gonna get into all of that here in just a minute. But first, I wanna go back to what I was talking about, the differences between US campgrounds and Canadian campgrounds. Here we go.
I don't think we've seen a single campground with 50 amp service, which is fine because it's not super hot.
A $50 campsite in Canada is much different than a $50 campsite in the United States.
Yeah, and we're not hating on Canada campgrounds. We understand you guys are dealing with harsh weather all year, and you do what you gotta do.
Yeah, we love you peeps.
But if you're looking for a campground with laundry, pool, hot tub, full hookups, it ain't there.
It has all the basic necessities to live and get you to Alaska safely, and that's all that matters.
We stayed at a campground in Whitehorse. I made the general assumption, which is where I went wrong, that this campground would have full hookups, because when we booked it, it was $55 a night,
Yeah.
pull through, and I'm like, for sure it's full hookup. Make sure you ask, because we get there, there's no water, the sewer is a dump station that's kind of just a hole in the ground, and if we wanted to use their showers, it was a coin-operated shower.
With loonies and toonies.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion around, can you just pull over anywhere you want to overnight camp if you don't want a campground? Yes and no.
We learned, well, I don't know that we learned, because in the milepost book, it says that there's absolutely no overnight parking at these rest areas.
But then you get there and it looks like people have been living there for 3 years. I'm pretty sure if you're just pulling over and you need a place to rest your head for the night, that it's totally fine. Be smart about it, guys.
Maybe you guys can provide some insight on it and throw it down in the comments below to help everyone learn. But what we do know is there are plenty of rest areas along the highway in Canada. Canada, hats off to you guys, you are rocking it.
The best way to find these campsites is pretty much the same we do when we're in the lower 48. We use our Allstays Pro, RV Life, Campendium, and an additional resource was the Milepost book itself.
And that's all in the description below for your reference. If you're looking into those apps, they're a great place to start. Using these apps though, is there even cell phone service up there?
Wait, but Starlink.
Oh, yes, but Starlink. Is it the savior of all? Well, let us explain. We personally use AT&T as a primary provider for our cell phone services. We noticed immediately upon crossing the border that we had to turn our roaming on. And the coolest part is, according to our plan, we did not have to pay extra fees for being in a different country when it came to like text and talk, but definitely look into your own plan because it may be different.
Once we flipped on that data roaming, we were able to make calls, we were able to text, load our maps. By the way, don't do what I did and load your maps, and then when you have zero service all day, completely cancel out your maps, okay? There is a way you can download your route for the day through Google Maps or whatever you're using, and that is probably a good idea. You will not have service on the Cassiar Highway.
Starlink came into play so amazingly on the Cassiar Highway though. There's actually a website you can go to that shows you all the satellites and where they float and hang out up there in the Netherlands. If you're looking for other options like Starlink, we have a whole entire video dedicated to that. I'll leave it linked up above for your reference. Go check it out after getting done with this video.
And we're still collecting data on how Starlink is here in Alaska, so you're gonna wanna hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to tune of what's going on with our travels up here.
You did it? Oh, thanks. You guys are awesome. Welcome to the Hanksnanigans.
Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. We're gonna talk money.
Cash versus credit card.
Ooh.
Do you need cash going into Canada? How crucial is it you have it on hand at all times? Or can you just swipe a credit card and get away with the foreign transaction fees? Great questions. Starting off, we would say always have cash on hand. For those instances where you just, what if this happens, you're covered.
Sometimes the card reader is down on that desolate fuel station. Or you go to a campground and they accept cash only, or you have to put money in a little envelope, drop box.
Or for instances, those situations like the facilities at the campgrounds where it requires the loonies and toonies, you know, the payment for the showers. It's nice to have the smaller bills on hand that you can trade that in and actually use the facilities.
And as always, laundry.
Can't forget about that one. Now, just a little insight. We did get all this done prior to crossing the border. When we were in Washington, we went to a money exchange place, traded in like $800 US, got it received in Canadian cash, and we proceeded from there.
Can you even use a credit card in Canada? It depends.
We did, and guess what? We paid some foreign transaction fees. We're gonna explain how much we paid in the foreign transaction fees, but before we get into that, we do wanna mention it's very important you reach out to your bank before continuing down this avenue of swiping the credit card in the different country. They can add up quickly.
You also want to let them know you're traveling so they don't just like cancel your card and it's like, someone in Canada's using your credit card, don't worry, I shut her off.
So we spent 13 days traveling through Canada in an RV, but how much did we actually spend? Well, we broke it down in each category, so pay attention and take some notes. Let's get into groceries.
Ooh, food, my favorite.
Oh, me too.
Now, before we get into this, know that we stocked up on whatever we could prior to crossing the border because we didn't want to have to pay all the extra fees and things like that. Now, when I give you the total in US dollars, it is without the transaction fee because we're gonna give you that after. All right, for food and groceries, so this is going out to eat, grocery store, or if we bought like a bottle of wine or something like that. The total in American dollars, $355.24. Rough estimate for Canada dollars, that would be $470.
How about actually sleeping at night? How much do we spend in campgrounds across the board?
Now, to give you some context and data for this, we did stay at 2 different private campgrounds. We did overnighting at provincial parks, and there was one night where we slept at a turnout and didn't pay anything.
So it looks like total for the campgrounds in US American dollars, we spent $413.79, which roughly equals to about $548 in Canadian dollars. And the reason we say roughly is because this changes all the time. The conversion rate is different every single day. Now onto the meat and potatoes, my favorite, fuel. Diesel exhaust fluid.
This is the big one that people want to know.
It's the one I wanted to know. How do I prepare? What are the fuel prices like? Here we go.
Also, this includes about 3 or 4 boxes of DEF.
Yeah, I would say.
So I threw that in there too because it kind of goes hand in hand if you're have a truck that needs DEF.
The total we spent in diesel.
Wait a second. Before you give the total, we should talk about something.
What?
We should talk about how desolate it was for fuel out there, and is an auxiliary tank really needed?
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense because that was a huge concern. We almost bought an extra fuel tank to have on hand. We had heard so many horror stories out there of like, you're gonna run out of fuel.
Was diesel far and few between as people made it out to be? I would say kind of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
There were times we went to a fuel station and they were out of diesel. Now that was in the town of Smithers where there was other resources available.
Yeah.
And we made sure to call ahead when we had cell service to make sure our upcoming fuel stop did have diesel.
And as I always say, it's kind of like the United States when you're going through Death Valley.
Yes.
It says your next fuel resource is this many miles away, so make sure you fuel up. If you're running at 3/4 of a tank, half a tank, fuel up, save yourself some headaches, and then proceed on from there. You just keep common sense to the forefront of your mind and you're gonna be okay. As far as the auxiliary tank, they are so expensive. You're talking anywhere from $500 to $1,500 for the tank itself. That's not even including labor.
You have to get those professionally installed because of all the regulations and the maintenance on it.
Wait, I thought you could just install a fuel tank yourself.
This is where some of you can maybe weigh in on this in the comments. If you had an auxiliary tank installed, did you do it yourself? And how did you get around all the like inspections and regulations they have on those types of things? Because from what I'm learning is you can get some crazy penalties if you are inspected and that tank is not up to the Department of Transportation's needs. Guess how heavy they are?
I couldn't tell you, I don't know.
100-gallon auxiliary tanks, empty, could weigh anywhere from 200 to 300 pounds.
Well, how much is like a weight of diesel like per gallon? Do you know?
Apparently diesel weighs less than gasoline. It's like 7.1 pounds per gallon. And if you have an auxiliary tank that holds 100 gallons, that's a lot.
That's a lot, not including the fuel tank, which is, that almost takes you over 1,000 more pounds.
Yeah, and I get it because you could fuel up where it's cheaper and then you don't have to fuel up where it's desolate and expensive, but now you're burning through more fuel
You're kinda
because
like-
it weighs more, so you're
Yeah.
almost like evening out.
You're chasing your tail in that
Yeah.
situation. It's kind of up to you, but if it were up to us, we would say, I wouldn't stress it. Do you need it to get to Alaska? No, you do not.
Yeah, and it's not like you have unlimited payload in your truck either. Like payload and towing is such an issue when you're buying your RV, so I don't really know a lot of people that have that much extra payload in the truck. We could have gotten so many upgrades to make our drive safer and much easier, but we want to show you that you don't have to absolutely have these things to do Alaska. Our biggest thing is take your time and be smart about it.
But without further ado, here we go. What's the final pricing on the diesel and the diesel exhaust fluid that we spent going through Canada? One last thing, if you're finding that this information we're bringing to you, you're enjoying it, you're learning something, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and share it with anybody else at RV so that maybe they can learn. We would really appreciate it. And it would help support us. The total cost we spent going through Canada in US dollars was $1,132.75. Rough conversion rate into Canadian dollars, $1,500 even.
I don't know about that. That's a lot of moolah.
That's a lot of moolah for some fuel.
We paid some expensive prices driving through the desolate areas of the Cassiar Highway.
Upwards of like $5 a gallon, I would say, when converted.
Yeah. What?
But-
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Fees. How much should we pay in foreign transaction fees altogether?
So our foreign transaction fee on our Visa card is 3% per transaction.
So let's start off with food and groceries.
$10. Yeah.
When it came to fuel, we spent $33 in foreign transaction fees, and then campgrounds was another $10. So in total, we spent $54.80 in foreign transaction fees. Not breaking the bank.
I don't know, but if you're a person that is like a crazy penny pincher, that $50 could be put towards something else.
That's true.
So if you want to save some money with those foreign transaction fees and just have a ton of cash, that's fine. We don't like carrying that much cash around, so it's like that foreign transaction fee was kind of like insurance in a way for us and convenience.
Let's go into the grand total of everything we paid for so you guys can have like a broad view, like a bird's eye view. The total we spent in US dollars was $1,902, which roughly equivalates to Canadian cash being $2,520.
And remember, this is just food, campgrounds, and fuel. This does not include excursions or laundry or all that extra stuff you guys want to do.
Now listen, if you want more insight on how much it actually costs to live in an RV for like a year at a time, or you want to catch up on the video of us actually going through all of Canada, check out these videos right here because we're bringing it all to your front door. Love you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.